He stands as a living symbol, draped in the colors of a nation, wielding a shield not just of metal but of unwavering principle. He is Captain America, the Sentinel of Liberty, the First Avenger. But beneath the iconic cowl, behind the legendary shield, lies the story of Steve Rogers, a story that begins not with godlike power or technological marvels, but with profound fragility and an unbreakable spirit. How did the smallest kid from Brooklyn become the pinnacle of human potential? What drives a man, frozen for decades, to keep fighting for a world that constantly changes around him? And what does it truly mean to be Captain America? Welcome, truth seekers, to Worlds Unwound. We are your guides through the intricate histories and sprawling lore of the characters and universes you cherish. Today, we answer the call to assemble for one of the most requested, most foundational stories in the Marvel Universe, the entire lore of Steve Rogers, Captain America. From his humble, sickly beginnings, through the fires of World War II, his icy slumber, his reawakening as a man out of time, and his unwavering leadership against threats both earthly and cosmic. It's a chronicle of courage, sacrifice, idealism, and the relentless fight for what's right, even when the world itself seems lost. This deep dive is going to cover decades of history, countless battles, and profound character evolution. If you believe in standing up for the little guy, if you admire unwavering conviction, and if you want to join us as we explore the complete sagas of heroes like Cap across Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and beyond, then demonstrate your own heroic spirit by hitting that like button. And make sure you subscribe to Worlds Unwound and activate that notification bell so you don't miss a single part of Steve Rogers' incredible journey or any of our future explorations. Your support helps us keep fighting the good fight. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us what single moment best defines Captain America for you. Now, let's journey back. Back before the shield, before the serum, before the legend. Back to the early 20th century, to the bustling, often harsh streets of New York City, the Lower East Side, or perhaps working-class Brooklyn, depending on the telling. Here, Stephen Grant Rogers was born. His beginnings were marked by hardship. Growing up during the Great Depression, poverty was a constant companion. His father, often depicted as an immigrant or struggling worker, tragically died when Steve was very young, leaving his mother, Sarah, to raise him alone under difficult circumstances. Compounding this, Steve was perpetually frail and sickly. Asthma, high blood pressure, rheumatic fever, scarlet fever, a laundry list of ailments plagued his small frame, making him an easy target for bullies and constantly setting him apart from his healthier peers. But within that fragile body resided a spirit forged of pure grit. Steve Rogers possessed an innate, unshakable sense of justice. He simply couldn't abide bullies, couldn't stand by when he saw others being picked on or pushed around, no matter how small or weak he was himself. He would stand up time and again, even knowing he'd likely get beaten down for his efforts. "I can do this all day," became his quiet mantra, a testament to his refusal to yield, his stubborn insistence on doing what was right, regardless of the personal cost. His mother instilled in him a strong moral compass, a belief in fairness and the importance of standing up for oneself and others. Her death from illness while Steve was still a teenager left him truly alone, but fortified with the values she imparted. As Steve grew into young adulthood, the world outside his neighborhood was darkening. Across the Atlantic, Nazism was on the rise in Germany, fueled by hatred and bent on conquest. Fascism spread, threatening the freedoms Steve held dear, even from his vantage point in America. When Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and the United States officially entered World War II, Steve Rogers felt an immediate burning desire to serve. This wasn't just patriotism, it was an extension of his lifelong fight against bullies. He saw Hitler and the Axis powers as the ultimate bullies, threatening the entire world, and he knew with absolute certainty that he had to do his part. He had to fight. There was just one significant problem: his physique. Driven by righteous conviction, Steve attempted to enlist in the U.S. Army and was promptly rejected. His numerous health conditions immediately disqualified him. He tried again, perhaps lying about his address or trying different recruitment stations. Rejected again and again. Classified 4F, medically unfit for duty. Steve faced the crushing reality that the very country he desperately wanted to defend wouldn't let him, simply because his body couldn't measure up to his spirit. Imagine the frustration, the feeling of helplessness. watching others go off to fight while being told you're simply not good enough, despite having more heart and courage than almost anyone. But Steve Rogers didn't know how to quit. His relentless attempts, his sheer unwavering determination to serve despite his physical limitations, eventually caught the eye of someone important. Dr. Abraham Erskine, a brilliant German scientist who had defected to the United States, bringing with him the secrets to a revolutionary, top-secret military program known as Project Rebirth. General Chester Phillips, the gruff military commander overseeing the project, was initially skeptical of this scrawny kid, but Dr. Erskine saw something crucial in Steve that others overlooked. Project Rebirth aimed to create the ultimate soldier, enhancing human capabilities to superhuman levels through Erskine's experimental Super Soldier Serum. Many candidates had been considered strong, athletic men who seemed physically ideal, but Erskine believed the true measure of a super soldier wasn't physical prowess, but moral character. He feared giving immense power to someone who might abuse it, someone already strong who might become a bully on a grander scale. He saw in Steve Rogers not weakness, but inherent goodness, humility born from hardship, and courage proven not through strength, but through the willingness to stand up even when weak. Because the strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power. Erskine might have reasoned, but a weak man knows the value of strength and knows Steve Rogers, the kid who always stood up to bullies, was chosen not despite his weakness, but because of it. He embodied the spirit Erskine believed was essential for wielding such power responsibly. With General Phillips's reluctant approval, Steve volunteered, understanding the risks but driven by his desire to finally contribute to the war effort. The procedure was complex and experimental. Strapped into a specialized apparatus, Steve was injected with Erskine's vibrant blue Super Soldier Serum. Then his body was bombarded with precisely controlled levels of phyto rays, designed to catalyze and stabilize the serum's transformative effects. The process was intense, likely painful, as his body was fundamentally rewritten on a cellular level. The results were instantaneous and astonishing. The chamber opened, and emerging from the Vita-Ray apparatus wasn't the frail, 90-pound weakling who went in. Standing before the stunned observers was Steve Rogers, transformed. Taller, muscular, the absolute pinnacle of human physical potential. His strength, speed, agility, stamina, reflexes, even his senses and mental processing speed were all enhanced to the peak of human capability, possibly slightly beyond. His chronic illnesses vanished, replaced by perfect health and rapid healing abilities. The serum hadn't just made him strong, it had optimized his entire being. Tragedy, however, struck in the moment of triumph. Just as Erskine celebrated the procedure's success, Heinz Kruger, a Nazi spy who had infiltrated the facility, emerged from the shadows. Kruger shot and killed Dr. Erskine before he could fully document or replicate his perfected formula. Steve, reacting with his newfound speed and reflexes, pursued Kruger, ultimately cornering him. Kruger, rather than be captured, chose suicide, taking the secrets of the serum's exact composition with him, though a vial of Steve's enhanced blood would later become the source of many attempts to recreate it. Dr. Erskine's death was a devastating blow. The dream of creating an army of super soldiers died with him. Steve Rogers was now unique, the sole successful recipient of the perfected Super Soldier Serum. The US government had its super soldier, but only one. Unsure how to best utilize this unique asset in direct combat without the risk of losing their irreplaceable weapon, and perhaps wanting to capitalize on his symbolic potential, the government initially took a different approach. Instead of sending him immediately to the front lines, they turned Steve Rogers into a propaganda icon. They designed a colorful, somewhat flamboyant costume based on the American flag. Bright blues, reds, and whites, complete with wings on his mask. They gave him the title Captain America, but his initial duties weren't storming Nazi bunkers. They were starring in USO shows, performing choreographed mock battles, punching actors dressed as Hitler, promoting war bonds, and appearing in serial films and comic books designed to boost morale both at home and among the troops. He became a celebrity, a living recruitment poster, a symbol used to inspire others, but far removed from the actual fighting he desperately craved. Steve played the part, understanding the importance of morale, but grew increasingly frustrated. This wasn't why he signed up. This wasn't the contribution he wanted to make. He felt like a show pony, a fraud. While real soldiers were fighting and dying overseas, he yearned to use his newfound abilities for their intended purpose, to fight the bullies, to make a real difference on the battlefield. The star-spangled costume felt less like armor, and more like, well, a costume. The gap between the symbol the government wanted him to be and the soldier he knew he could be began to weigh heavily upon him, pushing him towards taking matters into his own hands. The propaganda tool was about to become a weapon. Steve Rogers' frustration with his role as a glorified stage performer reached a boiling point. While touring near the front lines or even within the United States, opportunities arose where Nazi saboteurs or spies threatened Allied efforts. Unable to stand idly by while wearing the very symbol of American intervention, Steve took action. Shedding the flashy stage persona, he used his enhanced abilities, his speed, strength, and tactical mind, to covertly thwart enemy plots, often without official sanction. His success in these real-world encounters proved his potential beyond just selling war bond. It demonstrated that Captain America could be more than just a symbol. He could be America's most effective soldier. Recognizing his potential and perhaps realizing the waste of keeping him on the sidelines, the government brass, likely including figures like General Phillips and perhaps even President Roosevelt himself, agreed to deploy him properly. His costume was refined, made more practical for combat while retaining its iconic symbolism. More importantly, he was equipped with his signature weapon, a tool that would become as legendary as the man himself, the shield. This wasn't just any shield. Early versions might have been simpler, heater-shaped designs, but the definitive shield was a marvel of metallurgy. Crafted by the metallurgist Dr. Myron McLean, who was attempting to create an indestructible alloy for tanks, the shield was forged from a unique accidental blend of vibranium, a rare Wakandan metal known for its ability to absorb vibrations and kinetic energy, and an experimental steel alloy, sometimes referred to as proto-adamantium, an early precursor to the metal that would later bond to Wolverine's skeleton. The exact process couldn't be replicated, making the shield's composition unique and virtually indestructible. Its circular design, combined with Steve's enhanced physique and spatial awareness, allowed for incredible defensive capabilities, deflecting bullets, energy blasts, and heavy impacts. But crucially, its perfect balance, aerodynamic properties, and Steve's mastery allowed him to throw it with uncanny accuracy, ricocheting it off surfaces to strike multiple targets before returning faithfully to his hand. The shield became an extension of Captain America himself, a symbol of defense, an unstoppable offensive weapon, and a representation of his commitment to protecting others. Equipped with his shield and a mission, Captain America was finally unleashed onto the battlefields of World War II, but he wouldn't be fighting alone. He was assigned, or perhaps unofficially adopted, a young partner, James Buchanan, Bucky Barnes. In the original comics, Bucky was depicted as a tenacious teenager, an orphaned army brat serving as the camp mascot at Camp Lehigh, where Steve Rogers was stationed. Bucky accidentally discovered Steve changing into his Captain America uniform, stumbling upon his secret identity. Instead of reporting him, Bucky, already idolizing the hero, eagerly volunteered to become his sidekick. Despite Steve's initial reluctance to endanger a youth, Bucky's determination and inherent skills proved valuable. He was trained rigorously by Cap, becoming highly proficient in hand-to-hand combat, marksmanship, and infiltration tactics. He wore his own distinctive costume and served as Cap's partner on countless dangerous missions behind enemy lines. Their dynamic was crucial. Cap was the powerhouse and symbol, while Bucky was often the scout, the infiltrator, the one who could handle tasks requiring stealth or agility. He provided Caps with companionship, a link to the youthful energy Steve himself barely experienced, and someone to watch his back in the chaos of war. Their bond became incredibly strong, a brotherhood forged in the crucible of combat. They were Captain America and Bucky, America's fighting duo against the Axis powers. Captain America and Bucky didn't operate solely as a duo. They frequently collaborated with other Allied special units, most notably Sergeant Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos. Fury, the cigar-chomping, hard-nosed leader of an elite, ethnically diverse squad of Rangers, including characters like Dum Dum Dugan, Gabe Jones, Izzy Cohen, Reb Ralston, and Dino Manelli, specialized in high-risk missions deep within enemy territory. Captain America and Bucky often joined forces with the Howlers, combining Cap's superhuman abilities and Bucky's skills with the Commandos' grit, firepower, and battlefield experience. These joint operations against heavily fortified Nazi bases, Hydra facilities, or key Axis targets became legendary, showcasing the synergy between superhuman power and elite military training. The mutual respect forged between Steve Rogers and Nick Fury during these wartime encounters would lay the groundwork for their complex relationship decades later when Fury became director of S.H.I.E.L.D. The primary target of many of these missions, the embodiment of the evil Captain America fought against, was the Red Skull. An Shin was Hitler's terrifying right-hand man, a brilliant scientist, master strategist, and ruthless agent of terror. His grotesque red, skull-like visage, sometimes a mask, sometimes the result of his own flawed super soldier experiments or mystical curses, struck fear into the hearts of Allied soldiers. As the head of Hydra, the Nazis' advanced science division, the Red Skull pursued esoteric power sources, developed terrifying superweapons, and orchestrated elaborate schemes aimed at Allied defeat and global domination. The conflict between Captain America and the Red Skull was intensely personal and ideological. Cap represented freedom, democracy, and the potential for human goodness, enhanced by science. The Skull represented fascism, hatred, oppression, and the perversion of science for evil. Their battles were clashes of titans, both physically and philosophically. The Skull constantly sought to break Captain America, not just defeat him physically, but crush his spirit, prove his ideals worthless. He employed deadly assassins, unleashed monstrous creations, and masterminded plots designed to demoralize the Allies, often targeting Captain America directly as the symbol of their resistance. Cap in turn relentlessly pursued the Skull, thwarting his plans time and again, recognizing him as the ultimate embodiment of the tyranny he fought to destroy. Beyond the Red Skull, Cap and Bucky faced other significant Axis threats. Baron Heinrich Zemo, a brilliant and sadistic Nazi scientist, often clad in a purple hood, which became permanently bonded to his face after Cap thwarted one of his adhesive experiments, developed deadly weapons and concocted elaborate traps for the Allied heroes. Hydra, under the Skull's command or operating independently through figures like Baron Strucker, constantly deployed advanced technology, superpowered agents, and infiltrated Allied operations. Captain America became the Allies' premier weapon against these extraordinary threats, his shield deflecting death rays, his fists shattering robotic panzers, his leadership inspiring victory against seemingly impossible odds. He was more than a soldier, he was a living legend, the Sentinel of Liberty, taking the fight directly to the heart of darkness. His presence on the battlefield turned tides, his unwavering courage a beacon of hope in the war's darkest hours. But even legends faced their final battles, and a tragic destiny awaited Captain America and Bucky as the war neared its end. As World War II raged towards its conclusion, Captain America and Bucky were instrumental in pushing back the Axis forces across Europe. They thwarted countless plots, dismantled Hydra bases, and faced the Red Skull in numerous decisive confrontations. But the architects of Nazi terror had one last, desperate card to play. Baron Heinrich Zemo, the brilliant, cruel scientist, whose face had been scarred by his previous encounters with Capide, had developed a new weapon, an experimental high-altitude drone aircraft, armed with powerful explosives, aimed directly at the Allied capitals, likely London or Washington, D.C. Its purpose was simple, a final act of defiance and destruction, a terror weapon to strike fear even in defeat. Discovering Zemo's plan, Captain America and Bucky raced against time to intercept the drone plane before it could reach its target. In a frantic chase, likely involving motorcycles, commandeered vehicles, or even a daring leap onto the aircraft itself, they managed to board the speeding drone high above the English Channel or the North Atlantic. The interior was a maze of wires and ticking bombs. Zemo, perhaps anticipating their interference or simply rigging the plane for maximum destruction, had made disarming it nearly impossible. As they struggled against the clock and potentially automated defenses or even Zemo himself piloting remotely, disaster struck. Bucky, attempting to disable the primary explosive device, triggered a booby trap or was unable to defuse it in time. The bomb detonated prematurely. The explosion ripped through the drone aircraft. Steve Rogers watched in horror as his young partner, Bucky Barnes, was seemingly engulfed by the blast, blown clear of the wreckage and vanishing into the sky or the icy waters below. In the same instant, Captain America himself was thrown clear by the explosion, tumbling from the disintegrating plane into the frigid, unforgiving waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. The shock, the impact, the sub-zero temperatures. It should have killed him instantly, but the Super Soldier Serum, the miracle formula that had granted him peak human abilities, performed one last unintended feat. As his body plunged into the icy depths, the serum prevented the water molecules in his cells from crystallizing and expanding, the process that normally causes fatal damage from freezing. Instead of dying, Steve Rogers entered a state of suspended animation. His metabolic processes slowed to almost nothing, preserving him perfectly, frozen alive within a massive block of ice, drifting silently in the dark, cold currents. The world mourned the loss of its greatest hero. Captain America, the Sentinel of Liberty, the man who had punched Hitler and stared down the Red Skull, was gone. Lost in the final days of the war he helped win. Bucky Barnes, his courageous young partner, was also presumed dead, a tragic casualty of their final mission. Their apparent sacrifice cemented their legendary status, symbols of heroism and the price of victory. The war ended, the Allies were victorious, but without their star-spangled champion. As decades passed, the world moved on. The horrors of WWII gave way to the Cold War, the space race, rock and roll, civil rights movements, technological revolutions. Nations rebuilt, new heroes emerged, new threats arose. Captain America became a figure of history, a revered legend studied in textbooks, his image gracing museums, a symbol of a bygone era of clear moral choices and unified purpose. Most believed him dead, lost forever to the icy depths. But deep beneath the waves, Steve Rogers remained unchanged, locked in his frozen slumber, oblivious to the passage of time, until one fateful day, decades after the war's end, the newly formed Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes, were engaged in a conflict, often depicted as being with Namor the Submariner, the volatile king of Atlantis. During their battle or exploration in the Arctic regions, they stumbled upon a strange anomaly, a figure frozen within a massive block of ice, strangely preserved, clad in the familiar red, white, and blue. Recognizing the legendary uniform, the Avengers carefully retrieved the frozen figure. Using advanced technology, likely provided by Tony Stark, Iron Man, they began the delicate process of thawing him out. They monitored his vital signs, astonished to find faint signs of life. Slowly, carefully, they revived him. Steve Rogers opened his eyes not to the familiar sights and sounds of the 1940s, but to a world transformed. Bright lights, strange technologies, unfamiliar faces staring down at him, Iron Man's sleek armor, Thor's godly presence, perhaps the Hulk's imposing form. His first moments were filled with disorientation, confusion, disbelief. Where was Bucky? What happened to the war? Where was he? The truth, when gently revealed by the Avengers, was a staggering blow. He learned that he had been frozen for decades, 50, 60, 70 years, depending on the specific time of his revival in comic continuity. The war was long over. His friends, his comrades like the Howling Commandos, were either dead or elderly men. Peggy Carter, the strong, capable SSR agent he had fallen for during the war, had lived a full life without him. And Bucky was gone, believed dead all these years. The grief and culture shock were immense. Steve Rogers was adrift, a man out of time. The values he fought for, clear lines between right and wrong, selfless sacrifice, national unity, seemed complicated, sometimes even lost in this faster, louder, more cynical modern world. Technology had leaped generations ahead. Society had changed in ways he couldn't comprehend. He was a relic, a living fossil, haunted by the ghosts of his past and struggling to find his place in an alien future. The world he saved had moved on without him, leaving him profoundly alone, grappling with the immense loss of time, friends, and the life he once knew. The legend had returned, but the man faced his greatest challenge yet, navigating the complexities of the 21st century. Lost and adrift in this unfamiliar modern era, Steve Rogers could have easily retreated, overwhelmed by the monumental changes and the ghosts of his past. But the core of the man, his sense of duty, his innate need to help, his inability to stand by when others were in danger, remained unchanged. The Avengers, the team that found and revived him, quickly recognized not just the living legend before them, but the tactical genius, the experienced soldier, and the unwavering moral compass he possessed. They offered him membership, a place among Earth's new protectors. Steve, seeing a world still in need of heroes, still grappling with threats both familiar and strange, accepted. Captain America joined the Avengers, finding a new purpose, a new team, and perhaps a new family in this bewildering future. His integration into the Avengers wasn't instantaneous. He had to learn about new technologies, new threats, and the complex personalities of his teammates. The brilliant but often arrogant Tony Stark, Iron Man, the regal and powerful Thor, the volatile Hulk, though Hulk's tenure was brief, the size-shifting Ant-Man, Giant Man, and Wasp. He had to adapt his 1940s combat tactics to face modern supervillains, alien invaders, and rogue artificial intelligences. Yet, his core strengths shone through immediately. His mastery of strategy and tactics, honed on the battlefields of WWII, proved invaluable. His hand-to-hand combat skills, combined with his peak human physique, made him a formidable fighter. And most importantly, his natural leadership qualities and unshakable integrity quickly earned him the respect and trust of the team. While Iron Man might have provided the funding and technology, and Thor the sheer power, Captain America became the heart and soul of the Avengers. He was the field commander, the one who could rally the disparate personalities and powers into a cohesive fighting force. His iconic shout, "Avengers Assemble," became a symbol of unity and hope. He wasn't necessarily the most powerful member, but he was often the most crucial, his strategic mind and inspirational presence guiding the team through their most desperate battles. He led by example, always placing the mission and the safety of civilians above his own well-being, embodying the ideals of selfless heroism. His relationship with Tony Stark became one of the defining dynamics within the team and the Marvel Universe itself. Initially, they formed a bond built on mutual respect. Tony admired Cap's heroism and leadership, while Steve respected Tony's genius and resources. They were the twin pillars of the Avengers. However, their fundamental differences inevitably led to friction. Steve, the man from an era of clearer moral lines, often distrusted unchecked power, be it governmental or technological. He valued individual liberty and believed in inherent human goodness. Tony, the futurist shaped by a world of gray areas and technological complexity, often believed in pragmatic solutions, sometimes involving necessary evils or sacrificing individual freedom for perceived greater security. He placed his faith in technology and control. This ideological divide, liberty versus security, man versus machine, idealism versus pragmatism, would lead to disagreements, arguments, and eventually outright conflict between the two leaders, most notably during the Civil War. Yet beneath the friction, a deep, brotherly bond persisted, making their clashes all the more poignant. Life outside the Avengers began to take shape for Steve as well, though romance proved complicated for the man out of time. He learned that Peggy Carter, the woman he loved during the war, was still alive but now elderly, her mind often clouded by age in most continuity. Their reunion was bittersweet, filled with unspoken history and the painful reality of the decades stolen from them. However, through his work with the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D., the International Intelligence Agency, now led by his old comrade Nick Fury, Steve met Sharon Carter, initially presented as Peggy's younger sister, later retconned to be her niece. Sharon was a highly skilled and dedicated S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, known by the codename Agent 13, drawn together by shared ideals, dangerous missions, and perhaps Steve seeing echoes of Peggy and Sharon's strength and spirit. They developed a deep romantic relationship. Their connection was often tested by the demands of their respective duties, the secrecy inherent in espionage, and the constant danger they faced from enemies targeting Captain America or S.H.I.E.L.D. But Sharon became Steve's most significant modern love interest and a capable partner in her own right. Steve also found a new partner in his heroic endeavors, someone who became perhaps his closest and most steadfast friend in the modern era, Sam Wilson, Originally a social worker in Harlem, Sam encountered Steve during a mission involving the Red Skull and the reality-altering Cosmic Cube. Sam, aided by the Red Wing, a falcon he shared a telepathic link with, initially due to the cube, later often depicted as an innate ability or specialized training, proved himself a courageous ally. Inspired by Kappa and equipped with a specialized winged flight harness, provided by allies like Black Panther, Sam Wilson became the high-flying hero. The Falcon, he became Captain America's regular partner, their teamwork becoming legendary. Their partnership was groundbreaking, representing one of the first prominent and equal interracial superhero pairings in mainstream comics. Sam wasn't just a sidekick, he was Cap's confidant, his eyes in the sky, and a hero who shared his unwavering commitment to justice. Their bond was built on mutual trust and respect, and Sam Wilson would eventually prove himself worthy of carrying Cap's shield and legacy himself. While Steve forged new relationships, the enemies of his past proved just as persistent as his ideals. The Red Skull, Johann Schmidt, had cheated death, his consciousness surviving the end of WWII, often through suspended animation, cloning, or even transferring his mind into other bodies, including, disturbingly, a clone body of Steve Rogers himself at one point. He remained Captain America's arch nemesis, the embodiment of Nazi ideology resurfacing in the modern world, leading splinter factions of Hydra or orchestrating elaborate schemes involving neo-Nazi groups and terrifying superweapons. The Skull's goal remained the same: destroy Captain America, corrupt his ideals, and achieve global domination through fascism and fear. Their battles continued, carrying the weight of their WWII history, a seemingly eternal struggle between liberty and tyranny. The legacy of Baron Zemo also endured through his son, Baron Helmut Zemo. Helmut, blaming Captain America for his father Heinrich's death and disfigurement caused by his own adhesive X during a fight with Capet, inherited his father's scientific genius, strategic brilliance, and burning hatred. A master swordsman and strategist, Helmut Zemo dedicated his life to destroying Captain America and everything he stood for. He frequently assembled and led the Masters of Evil, a dangerous coalition of supervillains united specifically to defeat the Avengers, often targeting Cap personally. His plans were intricate, his methods ruthless, making him one of Cap's most persistent and dangerous modern foes. Hydra, the insidious organization Captain America fought during the war, proved incredibly resilient. It survived the fall of the Third Reich, operating in the shadows, infiltrating governments and corporations, constantly evolving under new leadership like Baron Strucker or the enigmatic Madame Hydra, also known as Viper. Their mantra, "Cut off one head, two more shall take its place," proved terrifyingly true, as Cap and S.H.I.E.L.D. repeatedly battled their schemes for world domination through terror and subversion. Other threats emerged as well. Brutal mercenaries like Crossbones, often working for the Red Skull, physically obsessed with besting Cap, large criminal organizations like the snake-themed Serpent Society, and rogue science groups like AIM. Advanced Idea Mechanics, an offshoot of Hydra dedicated to achieving power through technological supremacy. Captain America found himself facing a complex modern world filled with threats both new and chillingly familiar, requiring him to adapt his tactics while holding fast to the principles forged in a simpler, yet no less dangerous time. While Captain America adapted to the modern world, finding new allies, new love, and confronting new iterations of old enemies, the ghost of his past, the unresolved grief over the apparent death of Bucky Barnes, remained a constant shadow. Bucky wasn't just a sidekick, he was Steve's younger brother in all but blood, the last living link to his pre-frozen life, and Steve carried immense guilt over his inability to save him during that final mission against Baron Zemo. For decades, Bucky's death was considered one of the few permanent casualties in mainstream comics, a foundational trauma for Captain America. But in the world of spies, super science, and hidden histories, death is not always the end. The earth-shattering revelation came years after Steve's revival, through fragmented intelligence reports, shadowy encounters, and eventually undeniable proof. Captain America discovered the horrifying truth. Bucky Barnes had survived the drone plane explosion. He hadn't perished. He had been recovered by Soviet forces, gravely injured, his left arm missing. Instead of being treated as a prisoner of war, Bucky's captors, specifically the clandestine Department X program led by the ruthless Vasily Karpov, saw potential in the young American operative. They subjected Bucky to brutal physical and psychological conditioning. His missing arm was replaced with a sophisticated cybernetic prosthetic, granting him enhanced strength and capabilities. More devastatingly, they systematically brainwashed him, erasing his memories, suppressing his identity, and reprogramming him into the ultimate covert assassin, the Winter Soldier. For decades, the Winter Soldier operated in the shadows, a ghost story whispered among intelligence communities. Kept in cryogenic stasis between missions to halt his aging, he was thawed out periodically to perform high-profile assassinations, acts of sabotage, and work operations across the globe, becoming one of the Cold War's most effective and deniable weapons, responsible for countless deaths and political destabilizations over 50 years. He was a legend, a phantom killer, utterly unaware of his former life as Bucky Barnes, Captain America's partner. When Captain America first encountered the Winter Soldier in the modern era, he saw only a ruthless, efficient killer. But something about the assassin's fighting style, a fleeting glimpse of familiarity, sparked a flicker of recognition. As evidence mounted, confirmed sightings, analysis of the cybernetic arm, fragmented intelligence, Steve was forced to confront the unthinkable. This deadly Soviet ghost operative was Bucky. This revelation hit Steve Rogers harder than almost any physical blow. The friend he had mourned for decades, the source of so much guilt, was alive, but twisted into the very kind of weaponized operative he fought against. Saving Bucky, restoring his memories, freeing him from his programming, became Captain America's most deeply personal mission. It wasn't just about rescuing a friend, it was about redeeming a soul, rectifying a historical injustice, and perhaps assuaging his own lingering guilt. Their confrontations were brutal and emotionally charged. Steve tried desperately to break through the Winter Soldier's conditioning, calling him by his name, reminding him of their shared past, using trigger words and shared memories. The Winter Soldier, programmed to see Captain America as a target, fought back relentlessly, torn between his ingrained mission and the confusing flashes of memory Steve's presence evoked. The struggle wasn't just physical, it was a battle for Bucky's mind and soul. A key turning point often involved the Cosmic Cube, later known as the Tesseract, the reality-altering artifact frequently sought by the Red Skull. In a climactic struggle, Captain America managed to get his hands on the cube and used its power not to defeat Bucky physically, but to restore his memories. The flood of returning memories, his life as Bucky, his partnership with Cap, the explosion, his capture, the decades of brainwashing and assassinations, overwhelmed the Winter Soldier, causing a complete psychological breakdown. Shattered by the weight of his past actions as the Winter Soldier, Bucky fled, disappearing once again into the shadows. He was no longer the programmed assassin, but he was also not yet the hero he once was. He embarked on his own painful journey of atonement, operating independently, sometimes as a vigilante, sometimes undertaking covert missions for Nick Fury or S.H.I.E.L.D., trying to make amends for the decades spent as a weapon, while still being haunted by his past and hunted by those who knew his history. Captain America never gave up on him. He continued searching for Bucky, offering support, defending his friend's attempts at redemption against those who only saw the Winter Soldier's bloody ledger. Their relationship slowly rebuilt, evolving from mentor-sidekick to brothers-in-arms facing shared trauma. Steve's unwavering faith in Bucky's inherent goodness, despite everything he had endured and been forced to do, was crucial in Bucky's long road back. Bucky's redemption arc reached a pivotal moment following Steve Rogers' apparent assassination after the First Civil War. With Captain America gone, the mantle and the shield needed a successor. While many assumed figures like Iron Man or perhaps even Sam Wilson might take up the shield, it was Bucky Barnes, encouraged by Tony Stark, who saw it as honoring Steve's wishes, who reluctantly stepped into the role. Donning a modified Captain America uniform, Bucky sought to honor his friend's legacy while still grappling with his own dark past. His time as Captain America was marked by a grittier, more brutal style, often employing firearms alongside the shield, reflecting his Winter Soldier training. He faced immense public scrutiny and battled villains who sought to exploit the perceived vulnerability of a new Captain America, all while trying to live up to the impossible standards set by Steve Rogers. he proved himself a capable, albeit conflicted, Captain America, earning the respect of the superhero community before eventually relinquishing the shield upon Steve's return. Continuing his own heroic path, often operating once more as the Winter Soldier, but now as a force for good, forever bound to Steve Rogers by their shared history of loss, survival, and redemption. The return and rehabilitation of Bucky Barnes added profound layers of depths, tragedy, and ultimately hope to Captain America's long and storied life. Even as Captain America grappled with the complexities of the modern world, the return of Bucky, and the constant threats from villains old and new, his relationship with the very identity he embodied came under scrutiny and faced periods of intense crisis. Steve Rogers was Captain America, but was Captain America solely defined by Steve Rogers? And who truly owned the symbol, the man, or the government that created him? These questions led to significant status quo shifts where Steve was forced, or chose, to step away from the shield and mantle. One of the earliest and most profound identity crises occurred during the original Secret Empire storyline. Through a series of investigations, Captain America uncovered a vast conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of the United States government. He discovered that a shadowy organization known as the Secret Empire, dedicated to sowing chaos and achieving power through subversion, was being secretly led by a high-ranking government official, heavily implied though not explicitly named in the original story, to be the President of the United States. This revelation shattered Steve's faith. The very system he had sworn to uphold, the government symbolized by his uniform, was deeply corrupted from within. Feeling utterly disillusioned, believing the Captain America identity itself had been tainted by this betrayal, Steve Rogers made a radical decision. He publicly abandoned the mantle and the shield. He couldn't, in good conscience, wear the colors of a nation whose leadership seemed so fundamentally compromised. He declared himself a man without a country, adopting the new heroic identity of Nomad. His Nomad costume was starkly different, dark blue and yellow, featuring a flowing cape, symbolizing his break from his past identity. As Nomad, he continued to fight crime and injustice, but operated independently, beholden to no government, only his own conscience. This period explored Steve's core principles separate from national identity, proving his heroism stemmed from the man, not the uniform. Eventually, after confronting the lingering threats of the Secret Empire and realizing that the symbol of Captain America was still needed as a beacon of hope, Steve reluctantly reclaimed the shield and the title, but the experience left a lasting mark, reinforcing his willingness to question authority, even his own government's. Another recurring challenge involved the Super Soldier Serum itself. While it granted him peak human abilities, it wasn't always stable or permanent in various storylines. Sometimes due to enemy attacks specifically designed to neutralize it, like specialized drugs or energy fields. Or sometimes due to unforeseen biological reactions, the serum's effects would begin to fade. This often resulted in Steve rapidly aging, reverting physically to the frail state he was in before Project Rebirth, or suffering debilitating weakness. These periods tested him immensely, forcing him to rely solely on his tactical mind, his indomitable will, and the support of his allies like Falcon or Sharon Carter. He would have to lead the Avengers from a command chair, outthink opponents he could no longer physically match, or operate using specialized exoskeletons or armor provided by Tony Stark. These storylines emphasize that Steve's true strength lay not just in his enhanced physique, but in his mind and spirit. He always found a way to restore the serum's effects, eventually, but these vulnerabilities highlighted his underlying humanity beneath the super soldier exterior. Perhaps the most direct challenge to his identity came from the government itself. A conflict arose with the Commission on Superhuman Activities, a governmental body overseeing superhero affairs. The Commission argued that the Captain America identity, the costume and the shield were property of the United States government, as they had funded Project Rebirth. They demanded Steve Rogers relinquish the title and operate under their direct authority. Steve, fiercely independent and wary of governmental control after his experiences, including the Secret Empire affair, refused. He argued that Captain America represented ideals, not directives, and that he couldn't compromise his principles by becoming a government agent subject to potentially political or unethical orders. Unable to reach an agreement, Steve once again resigned as Captain America, handing over the shield and uniform to the Commission. Determined to prove that Captain America was replaceable and needed to be under their control, the Commission selected a new candidate to wield the shield. John Walker. Walker was a physically imposing soldier, highly patriotic but also more aggressive, nationalistic, and mentally unstable than Steve Rogers. He underwent a process often involving the power broker to gain superhuman strength. As the new Captain America, Walker adopted a more brutal approach, sometimes crossing ethical lines Steve never would. While initially trying to live up to the mantle, Walker's tenure was fraught with conflict, public relations disasters, and increasing psychological strain, proving the Commission's point that simply putting someone in the suit didn't make them Captain America. Meanwhile, Steve Rogers, unwilling to give up fighting for justice, adopted another new identity during this period, simply the Captain. He wore a different costume, often red, white, and black, distinct from the flag motif, and wielded a shield provided by Tony Stark, initially adamantium, later vibranium. He continued to operate as a hero, sometimes clashing with John Walker, demonstrating that his commitment to heroism transcended the specific title. Eventually, the Commission realized their error. Walker's instability became undeniable, culminating in violent incidents. Recognizing that Steve Rogers embodied the true spirit of Captain America, they asked him to take back the shield and the name. Steve agreed, resuming his iconic role. John Walker, humbled and seeking redemption, was later given a new identity and costume as U.S. agent, often serving as a more aggressive government operative, sometimes ally, sometimes foil, to Captain America. This entire arc reinforced the idea that the mantle of Captain America was more than just a costume and shield. It required the specific character and moral compass of Steve Rogers to truly embody its meaning. These crises of identity, whether self-imposed due to disillusionment or forced by external pressures, consistently reaffirmed Steve's core values and his unique fitness for the role, proving time and again that the man was more important than the title. The numerous challenges to Steve Rogers' identity, his battles against resurrected foes, and his leadership within the Avengers all occurred against the backdrop of a changing world with increasingly complex threats and moral ambiguities. These simmering tensions, particularly his fundamental ideological differences with Tony Stark, finally erupted in the devastating conflict known as the First Superhero Civil War. As previously detailed in Iron Man's lore, the catastrophic Stanford incident, where the reckless actions of young heroes led to the deaths of over 600 civilians, prompted the U.S. government to enact the Superhuman Registration Act (SASRI). This law mandated that all powered individuals register their identities, receive government training, and operate under official oversight. Tony Stark, driven by guilt and a belief in pragmatic control, became the face of the pro-registration movement. Steve Rogers, however, saw the SHR as a dangerous violation of civil liberties, a threat to the safety of heroes' families through forced identity reveals, and a betrayal of the very freedoms they fought to protect. He believed heroes should answer to their own conscience, not government bureaucracy, and feared the potential for misuse of registered heroes as state weapons. When negotiations failed, and attempts were made to forcibly arrest unregistered heroes, Captain America became the leader of the anti-registration resistance, the Secret Avengers. This pitted hero against hero, friend against friend, in a conflict that tore the superhuman community apart. Captain America, now a fugitive from the very government he once symbolized, led his allies, including figures like Falcon, Luke Cage, Daredevil, and others who refused to register, in a desperate fight against Iron Man's pro-registration forces, S.H.I.E.L.D., and government-sanctioned teams. Cap's strategic brilliance kept his outnumbered forces in the fight, launching guerrilla attacks, rescuing captured heroes, and arguing passionately for their cause. The conflict saw brutal battles, devastating betrayals like the Thor clone killing Goliath, and increasingly questionable tactics on both sides. The war culminated in a massive battle in New York City. Captain America, gaining the upper hand over Iron Man in their personal duel, was poised for victory when ordinary citizens intervened, horrified by the destruction the hero's conflict was causing. In that moment, Steve realized they were fighting the wrong battle, that their war was hurting the very people they swore to protect. To prevent further harm and acknowledging the divisive impact of their fight, Captain America made the difficult decision to surrender, ordering his forces to stand down. He unmasked publicly, allowing himself to be taken into custody, choosing principle and the safety of civilians over personal victory or freedom. Tragically, while being led up the courthouse steps for his arraignment, Steve Rogers was shot by a sniper, crossbones, and seemingly finished off by a brainwashed Sharon Carter, manipulated by Dr. Faustus and the Red Skull. The world watched in horror as Captain America died. His apparent assassination sent shockwaves through the Marvel Universe, marking a dark end to the Civil War and leaving a profound void in the heroic community. Bucky Barnes, seeking to honor his fallen mentor, reluctantly took up the shield and became the new Captain America during this period. However, Steve Rogers wasn't truly dead. The bullets hadn't killed him, but had unstuck him in time, causing his consciousness to relive moments from his past, trapped in a scheme orchestrated by the Red Skull, now inhabiting a different body, who sought to use Steve's temporarily displaced body for his own nefarious ends. Eventually, Steve's allies realized what had happened and managed through complex means, involving time travel and mental battles, to rescue him, anchoring him back in the present. Upon his return, Steve chose not to immediately reclaim the Captain America mantle, acknowledging Bucky's capable service and perhaps needing time to readjust. Instead, he accepted the president's pardon for his actions during the Civil War and took on a new role as Commander Rogers, the nation's top law enforcement official, overseeing superhero activities, replacing the disgraced Norman Osborn after the Dark Reign. In this position, he directed various Avengers teams, including a secret Avengers Black Ops squad, using his strategic mind from a leadership position rather than the front lines, proving his value extended beyond wielding the shield. Eventually, circumstances required him to take up the shield and the Captain America identity once more, sometimes sharing the role or alternating with Bucky or later Sam Wilson. So, after countless battles, impossible odds, death, rebirth, and wrestling with the very meaning of his existence, what is the enduring legacy of Captain America Steve Rogers? He remains the unwavering moral compass of the Marvel Universe. While other heroes grapple with shades of gray, Cap consistently strives for what is fundamentally right, even when it's difficult or unpopular. He is the ultimate leader and strategist, capable of inspiring diverse individuals to work together and achieve victory against impossible odds. He embodies perseverance and indomitable will, the I can do this all day spirit that refuses to quit, no matter how beaten down he gets. His story is a continuous exploration of patriotism versus nationalism. He loves America, but his loyalty is to its ideals: liberty, justice, equality, not blindly to its government or policies. This often makes him a dissident hero, willing to stand against his own country when it strays from those ideals, as seen in the Secret Empire and Civil War arcs. He is forever the man out of time, bringing a perspective of perceived simpler values into complex modern dilemmas, constantly challenging the present by holding it up to the standards of the past. And ultimately, his legacy is one of inspiration, not just through his actions, but through his willingness to pass on the mantle, trusting others like Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson to carry the shield and continue the fight, proving that the idea of Captain America can live on beyond one man. Steve Rogers' journey is one of enduring relevance. From fighting Nazis in the 1940s to battling cosmic threats and confronting complex socio-political issues in the 21st century, he remains a benchmark for heroism. He is the proof that true strength lies not just in physical power, but in unwavering character, the courage to stand up for what's right, and the refusal to compromise fundamental principles no matter the cost. He is more than a super soldier. He is the living embodiment of an ideal, forever fighting for a better world. He is Captain America. Thank you for joining us on Worlds Unwound for this extensive chronicle of Captain America's entire lore. From the battlefields of World War II to the complexities of modern heroism, Steve Rogers' story is truly legendary. What part of Cap's history resonates most with you? Was it his wartime heroism, his struggles as a man out of time, or his stand during Civil War? Let us know your favorite Captain America moments or storylines down in the comments section. We always salute your insights. If you found this deep dive inspiring and want to continue exploring the rich histories of characters across all universes, please show your support by giving this video a like, and crucially, subscribe to Worlds Unwound, and ring that notification bell so you become part of our community, always ready to assemble for the next exploration of incredible lore. Your support is the shield that helps us continue. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Stand tall for what you believe in.